guys, my name is Christy. My story is about how I found out that every secret sooner or later becomes clear. And the longer you hide it, the more you hurt your loved ones. It happened to me and my parents, and my life hasn't been the same since then. I have to say, our family has always been troubled. For as long as I can remember, my parents have been fighting. They even came close to a divorce a few times. But then everything went back to normal and we had happier times. We were like the crew of a ship. When the sea was calm, we were fine. But then Dad would start rocking the boat and he would create the storm himself. And here began the endless bickering and problems. And the only reason for these little arguments was money. It's a shame to admit that a stupid thing like money has had a huge impact on our lives. The thing is, my dad always wanted to start his own business. He spent his days pondering ideas and plans. He was a dreamer, and he wanted to make a lot of money. But the fact is that while he dreamed of his El Dorado, he remained unemployed and stuck at home. So Mom had to provide for the whole family on her own. She would come home tired after a hard day's work, and my father would start talking to her about another business venture, and he would tell her that we were all going to be rich soon. Do I even have to tell you that that's not what my mom wanted to hear? Of course, they fought again. And at some point, I have even gotten used to it. But the worst part was when Dad's enthusiasm went beyond his usual tales of wealth, and he really started to create something. First, he created a website with legal advice, which didn't work for even a month. Then he tried to rent scooters, but he had 0 clients in a month, and so on. But the thing is, he needed money for all of this, and we weren't in a position to spend family money on Dad's failed business ventures. At first, my mother agreed to these ventures, but then she lost faith in their potential for success and refused to help my dad. And the biggest fights happened when Dad took money without Mom's permission. Several times, my mother even kicked my father out of the house, but he always came back after a couple of days with flowers and apologies. And my mom always forgave him because they loved each other and they stayed together despite their difficulties. Due to constant problems with money, I started working from the age of 15. Small part-time jobs allowed me to have at least some pocket money, but this money was barely enough for me to go somewhere with my friends. So imagine my surprise when Dad came to me asking to lend him money for his new startup. This request wasn't just weird, it was insane. How could I have that much money? Or did Dad think I was digging for gold instead of working at McDonald's? So I couldn't help him, but it made me worry. If Dad had come to me, it meant that he was desperate and something bad was about to happen. And I was right. He ended up taking money from the family budget again. Of course, Mom had a big fight with him after that, and Dad was kicked out of the house again. And this time, Mom was going to file for divorce. But about a week later, Dad returned not only with flowers, but also with good news. It turned out that he needed money to create an online store. He was going to resell various cheap trinkets and earn money on the difference in price. As soon as Mom started screaming that he was crazy and that he was ruining our family, Dad interrupted her and said that he already had his first clients, and in a month he was going to be able to pay back all the money and make an actual profit. It was hard to believe, but he wasn't lying. It turned out that a lot of people were interested in all sorts of cheap stuff from China, and every day Dad got more and more customers. Mom stopped treating Dad's idea with skepticism because this idea began to bring in real money. After all these years, Dad's business venture was finally working. Things were getting better and better every day. I quit my part-time job and started helping my dad. Our garage turned into an office and warehouse at the same time. Dad and I spent most of our time there, and we were just so happy. My mother was also happy that her husband finally started making money. This went on for several years, and eventually I moved to another city to go to college. Dad's business had grown so much that the warehouse in the garage was no longer enough. Dad rented an office, and he even had a dozen employees. Everything was perfect until I got a call from my mom. She was very worried and said that Dad was hiding something from her. He was spending a lot of money saying it was for my education, and my mom wanted to ask me if that was true. The thing is, I got money from my dad, but it was not the huge numbers my mom was talking about. I wanted to clear things up with Dad, but he wouldn't even tell me the truth. And he did have a reason to hide it, because when we found out, it turned our lives upside down. That's how it happened. My parents had a big fight, and my dad didn't want to spend the night at home. So he went to the office, trying to take his mind off family problems by working. But a terrible thing happened. The building caught fire because of a short circuit, and Dad was barely able to get out alive. He received a large number of burns. Doctors fought for his life for a week, but he did not survive. The most terrible thing is that we were not even allowed to see him in the hospital room. The only visitors who were allowed to see him were lawyers to resolve some business issues. We didn't even get to say a proper goodbye to him. We were very sad for Dad, and we were very sorry that our last conversations with him were fights. If only I had known that was going to happen. Then there was the funeral. A lot of people came to say goodbye to him. He was a good man, and we loved him very much, no matter what. He always tried to make our lives better, even if he sometimes hurt us because of it. In the end, he was finally able to fulfill his dream. A few days after the funeral, a lawyer came to us and told us that my father had made a will. This is where all the problems began. It turns out he made this will while he was in the hospital, and he realized that he wasn't going to make it. The lawyer began to read the text, and his words struck us in the heart. My dad ordered that all of his property be divided between his wife and his 3 children. I was like, wait, 3? What? But he was not mistaken. My father attached to the will. He told us everything. In those days, when we lived a very poor lifestyle, and Mom and Dad constantly quarreled about it, he was very sad. He was hurt that his wife didn't believe in him at all, and he found solace in other women. He was very ashamed of it, and he always came home, but he never had the courage to confess. Then he found out that his former mistresses had kids, and they were his kids. He was tormented by guilt, and when he got rich, he paid them some kind of child support to take care of them. Before he died, he didn't think it was fair to give everything to my mom and me, so he decided to split it equally. After hearing this information, my mom and I were fully discouraged. Dad's been kind of cheating on us for the past few years, and we didn't even know it. That's why he lied about spending so much money on my education. He was trying to hide his former infidelities. A few days later, his mistresses with their children arrived. They brought a lawyer with them in order to collect their share of Dad's fortune, or rather, what was left of it after the fire. But my mother's reaction was very unexpected. She started screaming that she was not going to give anything away and kicked them out of the house. I guess I can understand her. Imagine that you've lived with a person for almost 20 years. You support him and you go through and suffer all his failures together, but then it turns out that he lied to you. So Mom wasn't going to share the property with them. But the fact is that the will cannot be ignored, and it is binding. But this didn't stop my mother, and she began to move forward with suing my father's mistresses. The process was long and unpleasant, and it went on for several months. I saw my mother gradually fall into a depression. In addition, it was also very expensive, and I knew she couldn't win the case. I guess she just fought because she didn't want to put up with the painful truth that came out after my father died. The struggle for money drained all the strength from my mother, and for months, I watched how my mother turned from a beautiful woman into a sad and angry person. I couldn't let her fall in that deep. Her struggle was pointless, and I decided to end it. I convinced her to drop the suit. Then we quietly got our share, and spend half of that money to pay the lawyers for this pointless fight. At that moment, I decided that money wouldn't bring happiness to our family. My parents fought a lot when we didn't have any money, and they fought when my dad made a lot of it. In these endless quarrels, they completely forgot about their family values and that the main thing they should have been focusing on was their family, not their bank account. Maybe Dad wanted to make life better for our family, but he ruined it when he cheated on Mom. And it all happened in this mad pursuit of money. So I decided to donate my share to charity. There are people who need this money more than me. My mom and I can live without it because the most important thing is that we have each other. We are a family, and there's nothing more precious than that.